Well, guys, I want to welcome you to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further and deeper. And this last Sunday, I talked about that the most important thing we could find in life is truth. And I said the question I think we all have is, what is true? Or how do we know what is true? And I actually shared 2 of the 3 tests of truth, but just to start our time, I'll share the third one. So when you're looking at truth, you want to look at, is it logically consistent? Is there empirical adequacy? Is there evidence? Do I see that in science? And is it experientially relevant? And so we talked about that. On Sunday, we discovered 3 truths, or 3 kind of big truths. Number one, it's in life, we're going to stumble. And I think we all would agree with that. And then in life, it's not good to be alone. And there's a lot of research on that. And then ultimately, the big truth is being connected can prevent us from stumbling, help us when we do, and ultimately can make life better. So we talked about that, and today we're going to take this conversation further. And I'm really excited because I've got special guests, Kristi and Keith Gordon. So guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here.
Yeah,
excited to be here.
Yeah, it's fun. So I know you guys a little bit, and we've known each other for how long?
Oh gosh, 10
10-ish. Yeah, our kids and all that kind of stuff. So, but for the listeners on the other side, tell us a little bit about who you are and interesting things about you guys.
Sure.
Well, we're the crazy Gordon family. We've got a daughter, Abby, who's 15, and a son, AJ, who's 13. And we kind of live for our summer vacays together and warm weather. So this little cold front we're having is
it's gotten
not
colder.
my happy place.
I know. Yeah.
Keith loves it. He kind of loves the snow, mountains.
Are you
kind
like
of
a
thing.
mountain guy, and then you're a beach lady?
For sure. Yeah.
I was born and raised in Florida and live in Texas, so
well, that's ironic. I mean, he's born in Florida, but would prefer to go to snowy mountains.
Yes.
I was born in Michigan, but prefer anything warm and sunny. So it's crazy how that works. But we normally do our little summer vacays together in warm weather.
Yeah.
But we did venture out for some snow.
Wow. This year?
And no, a couple years ago,
Okay.
Keith was like, I think the kids need a chance to play in snow.
Right.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
So we go out. He gets us signed up for dog sledding.
Dog sledding.
Dog
Did
sledding.
you guys go to Alaska?
We were in Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did
they
it.
have dog sledding in Colorado?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a little afraid, but, so kind of that something we do every single time we go on vacation is they all want to do something that mom's afraid of. So then mom has to do it, right?
And you have to stretch and grow, and you're and you feel guilted and shamed into the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I have to. No choice. So we do this dog sledding thing, and when it's Keith's turn to drive the dogs. Now, mind you, he's really driving the dogs.
Yes.
He's got Abby on the sled with him.
Yeah.
AJ and I are behind watching, and he doesn't slow down because he loves speed, which is great. But, not a car, doesn't have really brakes kind of thing. Anyway, takes this curve too fast and catapults Abby out of the dog sled.
And she's, 13 at this time or something
probably,
like that?
10
10
or 11, something like that. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, sent her right out of the sled. So we've since then gone back to beach vacations.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I mean, she got catapulted out, and I tipped over, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people in Texas actually have dog sledded?
See,
I'm sure in Alaska it's 90% of the population.
Yeah.
But in Texas, that is awesome.
And they give you they think it's a schooling on it. It's like a 2-second.
Is it like reins?
Yes.
Like if you're, I've ridden a horse, I think, twice in my life, and they have, is that what they're called, reins?
Yeah.
And then a little, what was the thing, kind of sort of a brake where you
sled
can
with a brake on it. Yeah. It was cool.
Okay.
So we're sticking to beach.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Well, guys, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here. And I know, I was thinking to you guys as I was thinking about this last Sunday and the message about community, about connection, because I know you guys have a story about that. And you guys have been kind of through the whole gamut of connection with our groups, and you've led groups, you've been part of groups. There's a lot of different dynamics you guys have experienced as, personally in your lives, as well as from a leadership perspective. And so I thought you guys were the perfect couple to talk through this. And so I'm just curious, just to kind of jump in to go, when did you guys get exposed to groups? Was it difficult to first get engaged in groups? What was the whole experience to get connected?
Yeah.
So we started going North Point about 2010, and had heard about and learned about groups and really resisted it. And I think, we both resisted it, but I definitely kind of led the front and that sounds like a really good idea for some people, but not for us. So it took us probably 7 or 8 years of going to North Point before we actually committed.
Every year you'd hear like a group message.
Oh,
and
well.
So I'm going to share something I'm a bit embarrassed about. But
This is truth, Buck. This is
here we go.
I got to a point where I knew the 2 group Sundays. And I would skip church on those Sundays.
January and August.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you're like, okay, I think it's week 3.
Yep.
I'm out.
You could feel it coming.
I didn't want to be in there and someone, and this is silly to say now, but I didn't want somebody to ask me why I didn't sign up for a group.
Yeah.
Or
just have me look at you
staring at me
and
with a
say, I
card or-
think God has said,
Exactly.
because I do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Buck's going to call us out.
So we had been exposed to it, and I found a way to try to avoid even talking about community groups.
Do you know what that was about? Like as you reflect now today, going, because that's real. I've heard that story a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt because I'm, contrary to popular belief, I'm such an introvert. Like for me, I just want to hunker down.
Yeah.
Like go up into the mountains, bring the boys, and we're fine for the next 50 years. We're good. So as you think about that, have you thought about what that was? Like what the resistance was about?
I think it was twofold. I think there was a little bit of our religious experiences growing up, and I had a vision in my head of what I thought community group was based on that.
Yeah.
Which was incorrect. And the other was just a general sense of, what if somebody finds out that we don't know the Bible as well as we should,
Sure.
or if they find out that we don't have a perfect life. What happens if we get into this group and we don't connect with these people? So it was a lot of false messages and a lot of what ifs, and also kind of afraid, well, if we go do this and we like it, then I'll have to admit that I was wrong. So
That's awesome to admit.
yes,
That's so good.
and we were, and it just took us 7 or 8 years to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so I think it was based on just not knowing what it was and assuming what it was without really figuring that out. Unfortunately, it took us to be at a kind of a rocky point in our marriage. During a group Sunday, and you were promoting Marriage Matters, and so that was where we made the leap of faith. As you were talking about Marriage Matters, and I looked at Kristi and I said, I think we need to do this. I think we should do this.
Wow.
So that was our first.
So that was the first kind of entrance into
Yep.
taking a step towards getting connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember that Sunday because he said that, and I thought, because we had tried to do it. Well, I had tried to get us to join once a couple of years prior.
Yep.
And he was like, okay. And I could tell really reluctant, okay. And then it was like the night before, and it's like, I can't do it. I'm like, okay. So we just didn't, and I just kind of accepted that we just wouldn't be in group together. I thought,
Sure.
you know what, it's something, I'll just go do it myself. It's just if we want to do this thing. And so when he leaned over that Sunday, I actually kind of chuckled. I was like, okay, because you like groups. Like, that's funny, haha. He's like, no, I'm serious.
Oh, wow. So you thought he was joking?
Yes,
initially.
I thought he was joking. He was so serious. So I thought, all right, you said it. I signed it right then because I'm like, you said it.
Yeah.
That's
We're
all I
doing
need.
it.
We're doing it.
Call my bluff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the beginning.
Was that with Craig and Jen?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So that was your first kind of entrance into it. So tell me about that experience. So, and I think what you just shared in terms of, gosh, what if I don't know the Bible? What if they're weird?
Right.
What if it's like this kind of religious cult thing?
Right.
All that kind of stuff. That's so fair. And I think that, that's just human. I think normal people will feel that. And so you guys get into community. What do you begin to experience? Like, what were the things that were like, maybe surprised you?
Yeah.
What were the things that were good, were not so good?
Well, I think even just right from the very first time, the day we were supposed to walk into group, I've been pushing this whole time, and he's been resistant. And we get there that Sunday
starting
morning
point room.
in the starting point room, and we're walking in, and I just had this, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. And so the door, we walk in, and I'm like, I just kept walking straight. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I don't think I can go in. I don't. And he was like, what are you doing? And he was like, come on, let's do this. And so he didn't even come grab me. He just walked in. He was like, well, I'm going in.
Wow.
I was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
So we went in.
How the tables had turned
Yes.
at that moment. Yeah.
It's funny the things you learn about yourself. Like you think
Sure.
you're one way until the experience happens.
Yeah.
And so, we were still, I think, had fears, like what if all those fears were still there when we walked in? But I think Jen and Craig did a great job of kind of pulling everybody together. And as we started talking, we're like, oh, these are other normal people too, just like us, kind of thing. And you heard other people's stories and you started realizing, oh, I'm actually not alone in it, in this. And it's okay to share things in a safe environment. I think that was the other part of the reason we didn't want to get into group is you kind of operate into this, what happens in our house stays in our house kind of thing. You don't, we didn't want people to be talking about us outside of it or share something or judge us. And it just wasn't that at all. Like it just felt like people were so authentic and you could just feel the hurt and you could feel the joy, like whatever stories they were sharing. And I thought, those are our stories that we're hearing in other people. And it was just kind of an immediate connection. That's
so good. Yeah, I think I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day about groups and about the, part of the dynamic of group is an accountability piece, which is like what I talked about on Sunday. There are things we can't see. Like Jesus talked about, impossible it is not to stumble in life. And part of the reason we stumble is because traps. Like there are things we don't see that we stumble over. And I gave this illustration, like one night I had to get up, because I'm over 40 and I got to get up at night and go to the bathroom. And there was a chair I didn't see and I stumbled. Jill's like, what are you doing? And, it was a pretty dramatic moment. But, I think Jesus is like just giving us a heads up in life because he loves us and said, guys, like there are things in life you will stumble over. And I think a lot of people go, well, if I get in a group, then it's all going to be about like, well, let me reflect this and judge you here and judge you. And I think where that happens is what you were talking about, Kristi, is that once you start to establish trust and you hear the Me Too and you're like, I'm not alone, and you begin to build that camaraderie, build that connection, and that doesn't happen overnight. That takes some time, and there's some vulnerability, and then you're sharing your story, and then all of a sudden that foundation allows you to be able to speak and encourage one another, not in something like, hey, let me judge you, but in something to go, hey, here's something that's worked in our marriage. Let's talk, but you have trust already with that person.
Yes, makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and it's a legit fear to go, because when we talk about groups, a lot of times we talk about care, belonging, and accountability. And I think the accountability piece is like, oh, they're going to judge me and all that stuff. And it's just not true. It's first building trust and building those relational, connections. And then it leads to a place from time to time when appropriate to kind of go, hey, can we have a conversation? And those are hard conversations, but some of the most beneficial conversations in our lives.
Yeah.
So you guys get in that group, and experience with Jen and Craig, and then so what was your experience like, Keith? Was it very similar to Kristi's?
It was a game changer for sure for not only our marriage but how we viewed groups, and actually looking forward to. It was a short-term group, so looking forward to those 8 or 9 weeks. And, we had exercises and homework to do. And actually, what was phenomenal was we learned quite a bit about ourselves, even after, at that point, been married for 15 years through that process. But also, met some other people that were going through similar challenges, learned that we weren't alone, let them know that they weren't alone, developed some friendships out of that. So it was... It was unfortunate that it took us to be in that position to go through that, but it was obvious that we weren't, at least I wasn't listening to Jesus for 7 or 8 years, and so we had to go to a a bit of an extreme. Yeah. But I wouldn't have traded that Marriage Matters group for anything. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
And then that actually we kind of parlayed that into being asked to actually lead a long-term group. Yeah. And almost immediately, my reaction was, oh, no. Nope. And those what ifs come back in, and I'm like, well, what if people learn that we don't have a perfect marriage and that we don't have perfect kids? I mean, what are they going to think about us? And what if they don't like our group or they don't like us? Are they gonna leave North Point? And just it was the same talk track that these false truths, if you will. We're just running through the back of our heads, but we did that, with Craig and Jen's assistance as well, and it was an amazing experience. And part of the traps you mentioned was, well, yeah, but now you're talking about every one night a week for 12, 18 months. I don't think I can commit to that. Well, we could, And we found that actually meeting with that group for that short period of time made the rest of the week more manageable.
Yeah.
And so we learned that there were other, we made some incredible friends in that group that we still, still interact with now.
Well, and I would say that was, it's funny, and I agree with you on the, I wish that we knew now, or back then, what we know now. I wish we hadn't waited so long because life didn't have to be that hard. And I think, the group experience for us has been, for sure, it saved our marriage. I mean, for sure it did.
Wow.
Changed how we parented.
Yep.
And I guess, when you hear it from stage, you don't understand, like, North Point isn't trying to take anything from you, or God isn't trying to take anything from you. And that's what it felt like. We're so tired and exhausted from life that to think about one more thing, we thought, I don't have anything else to give. And we actually experienced the opposite, that once we got into group and we had that support, and God was the center, not just us and our problems, and we had that support around us, that was for sure, I think, the best thing we've ever done as a couple. Our best experience together as a couple has been in a group environment. And it's hard to explain that other than just, it's a place where you can be you and have all your messiness out, and you still belong and you're still accepted. And I just wish that we're stubborn.
Yeah.
We wonder why our kids are.
Yeah.
We are.
Right.
We're thick-headed and
Right.
just didn't think we needed it,
Yeah.
anybody else. We thought we were doing we thought we were intentional. We thought we knew each other well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what we found was just that hour or two a week just flipped the script, as you say, and it was just that bit of intentionality and purpose and focus that we needed, and it was a game changer for us.
And it was something we were able to do together.
Yeah.
Which we
Which
didn't
was
do a
we
lot
were
of.
missing.
Yeah.
We didn't realize it. We thought we did things together, but we not intentionally at the same time or with the same level of effort. So that was big.
I heard something the other day about that whole concept of doing things together, creating fun moments together as a couple. And it's difficult because when you have kids, there's this chapter or several chapters of our life that we think, it's just going to extend forever. And all of a sudden our marriage becomes about the kids,
Right.
and it's experiences with the kids, and it's fun with the kids, fun events, and dance or sports or school or whatever it is, and we build our whole lives and our marriages around that, and then the kids go.
Right. Yep.
And if we're given the gift of longevity, and we have another 20, 30 years after our kids, well, we're going to be married far longer than the season or the chapters with our kids.
Yeah.
And so that intentionality to go, what are we doing fun together in our
Right.
marriage? How are we doing things together in our marriage? That's such a key component, and it's
Yeah.
encouraging to hear. And I do think, to what you were saying, Keith, and Kristi, is the idea with, gosh, do I have time to do that? And, and it's group night, and, all the things that kind of come into our minds. But I equate it sometimes to working out. And we were talking beforehand, I was telling you, okay, I'm trying to work out again and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a guy who wants to work out. I've got buddies who are like, dude, I can't wait to, and I'm like, who are you? But I'm like, I got to go suffer. And I'm willing to suffer for these 45 minutes. And that's what it feels like. But I'm telling you, every time I do it, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am so grateful I did it. And I think groups oftentimes are being connected, either, starting point groups or couples groups, men's groups, women's groups, Marriage Matter groups. It's so much like that. There's all this energy beforehand, but then going, you're like, dang, I'm so glad I did
Right.
that. And you just got to go to, experience that.
It was funny, we shared with our group, and it was funny how many other people would tell us the same things,
Yep.
they were fighting on the way to group.
Yeah.
But you get to group and you're kind of like, okay, we just kind of start, and then by the time we're going home, we're not fighting about that anymore. And not that it's like this magic pill, but I think there is definitely something when you take the focus off of yourself and in a group when we can share that, we're having a hard time with this, for people to be able to kindly show you your blind spots.
Yeah.
Because we both think that where our perspective is right, or, well, I was more right than Keith. And then it's, the things you learn about yourself and you have to be able to hear are hard, but I think those were game changers in our marriage too, because it showed me things that I didn't realize I was doing or not doing, and how other people perceived me. It's what he was telling me, but I just, was like, you hear it from your husband, but then to hear it from other people too, you're kind of like, oh.
Yeah. And when you hear stories of others, oftentimes that's the accountability piece in a group.
Sure.
It's not somebody going, hey, let me talk to you, Kristi, and I'm going to point these. It's way more of, if Jill and I are in group with you guys and we're just sharing our struggle in marriage.
Yep.
And you're like, man, the way they navigated that, that's exactly what we're struggling with. And now we don't feel alone, like we're isolated, and we have a way forward because what they talked about was so helpful. And there's so much of that is the accountability piece to where we're learning, we're getting new tools for our toolbox with whatever relationship, parenting relationship, friendships, marriage relationships. And that's just through being connected.
It's just perspective, and exactly what you said. It's hearing other people's stories, and when you can relate to that and they did something different or something that we hadn't thought about, and then we can then try that ourselves, or we say, oh gosh, I get that. That's where we are too. So
and now more than ever, right? And with the pandemic, we need community. And for anybody listening who has those same traps of, I don't have any time. Like many other couples, 2 working parents, extracurricular activities. I was traveling with work. You have aging parents, aging grandparents. We had health issues. There was a lot of reasons why we could have said, we're not going to do this. So those things are very real things that you have to balance. But it's it'll make a massive difference, investing in yourself and your relationship, investing in other people.
So how would you speak in, because I think that's a perfect tension. Because a lot of people I speak with, or a lot of people I connect with, the same kind of as I talked about on Sunday, but what you just phrased is like traps. These things that, like these voices inside of us that are saying, I'm too busy. Hey, I've got too much going. Hey, this thing's coming up. It's competing with this. I've got to, all of those. How would you guys lean into that? So if we had a room, full of people, and they were saying, hey, it's busy, it's work, it's family stuff, it's all this. I just don't have time. Like, how would you guys lean into that discussion?
I think one of the other traps that I was definitely dealing with before we did groups was this fear of, well, if I join this group and then I decide I don't like it or it's weird or fill in the blank,
sure,
it's going to be awkward, and then I'm going to have to leave the group, and then it's going to be weird, and it just felt like an all or nothing. And I think the first thing I would tell somebody is just give it a few weeks. Like, this is not all or nothing, and you're not going to burn any bridges if you decide this isn't going to work.
100%.
So try it, and in all likelihood, you probably do have 90 minutes a week to dedicate to this. It feels like you don't, but there's probably something that you can shuffle around your schedule. And I know childcare is an issue. There's a lot of reasons why committing to a group can be difficult. But I would say just try it, give it a couple of weeks, and if it doesn't work, try it again at some other point. If it does work, you'll find an amazing experience, and you'll interact with some really cool people and make some new friends.
And I definitely think that we were definitely guilty of overscheduling ourselves, and so I feel like carving out this time and making this a priority for us made the other things less overwhelming, not more. And we were afraid, like, it felt like, oh, one more thing, and I think it put us in a better position to handle the work and life and kids, and we just felt better equipped to do that. And we weren't doing it alone, so we didn't have to carry all that by ourselves. So it wasn't an added stress like we thought it would be initially. It actually set us up for a better week.
Which I think, I've heard people say this, again, going back to the working out thing. I don't know if I really experienced it. People have said like this runner's high or these big like workout, and I feel so much better. I still feel pretty terrible like before and after, but I'm just checking a box maybe. I don't know. But there is that thing to go like, once you do something, once you get on the other side of it, there is a benefit to that. There is, like, it gives you perspective. It gives you energy when, you didn't feel like you had the energy. And I think groups are very much the same thing. You go in, and I can't tell you Jill and I have been in groups or part of groups for 20 plus years. And I think the 50% of plus of the people who helped start North Point came from our small group where we formed those relationships, and I was like, hey, you want to start a church? And they were like, what? And but so many times just the week got better, perspective got better, just the problems that I felt like were level 8, 9 problems after group felt like there's still problems, but they were like level 4 or 5 energy instead of 8, 9 energy.
Yep.
Well, and I think we can convince ourselves, and we did, that we have enough other groups. Like we have the kids' sports groups or dance groups, but there's something different about a group that like what we talk about in group stays in group. So it's not like I'm at soccer practice or whatever, and you hear like, oh, did you know the Gordon? This is a safe place where we could actually be real and expose our challenges and our real family, like what we were going through, and it was just a different. We've never experienced that type of group where we could just be ourselves and felt comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think that to us was another thing. I think that, one more thing, but it's not the same. You can't compare that to the other circles in your life because, this was such a safe place to be real. Yeah. And do life with other people.
Yeah. And I'm going to get this stat totally wrong, but a buddy of mine shared something. He was once talking about being connected groups, and he said there's a stat, and it's something like 80% of people in the United States of America in a given 6-month period don't have a below the surface conversation. Mm-hmm. It's about the weather. Mm-hmm. It's about sports. It's like, how are your kids? They're fine. How's, so-and-so? They're fine. But that intentional conversation about, hey, how are you really doing? Right. Mm-hmm. Like, fine is kind of our, the glossing, but let's get behind that door and let's be intentional with really, real life stuff. And I think part of being connected in a group allows that place of safety, allows a place of trust, allows a place of confidence, like you were just saying, what we share in the group is going to stay here, that confidentiality to go, okay, this is the time I have this intentional conversation, a real conversation about life, about what I'm really feeling and thinking. And I just think that deposit is so healthy for us.
Mm-hmm. One of the related to that, but one of the things I look back on, and it makes me smile, is when you would, when we were meeting in person, but you would start to see your group members in church.
Oh yeah.
And that was just a cool experience. It's like, oh, and you just, it's a continuation, and then that hour or two a week turns into just ad hoc conversations, or getting a lunch, or getting a beer, or you start to develop friendships, and all of that is it's supported by the group, but it grows into something much more. But I remember walking out of a couple of Sundays in a row where you started to have different connection points, and that came out of being in group, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they just relationships that extend beyond that. Yeah, and like I alluded to earlier, I think some of my best friends today that I would totally, they have my ear. There's a lot of trust. All of that started in groups. I had no idea who they were before I got engaged in a group, met them, developed that relationship, and over the years, had fun, gone on vacations with them, all that good stuff. Yeah. And all of that started right there.
Yep. Well, and I think that's another kind of a fear, or maybe it's just a wall that we build up, but that you can't have fun friends at church. Like that just doesn't, you go to a group, you're not going to have real fun with your, and so silly.
You must be serious and talk about the Bible all the time.
All the time. And, and it was so funny. That was I remember one of the things that we want to have fun. Like we want to barbecue with people, and we want to go do. And now we're laughing because even holidays, we've spent 4th of July with almost our entire group. We did Super Bowl with Sunday, almost our entire group. Yeah. So it's funny because you can 100% have fun with people in a group like that. I think everybody's looking for that. You want that connection of people that can have fun together and still love Jesus. I mean, you can have fun and love Jesus. It's 100%
there you go.
possible.
We're going to quote that and put that somewhere. Yes. Yeah. I love it. Well, hey, something I talked about as well on Sunday was is what God said. He said it's not good to be alone. And I was talking about truth, and I think it's always good to go, okay, is that true though? Is that true? Is it not good to be alone? And there's all this research that from psychiatrists to psychologists to just all, across the board, just scientists who go, if we take God out of the equation, if we just look at what we can observe, what we can see, it is absolutely objectively not good to be alone. And it impacts our health, it impacts our depression levels, our anxiety levels, it impacts our hope for the future, all of that kind of stuff. And the other thing, it impacts our ability to stumble and not stumble. And I think we're all human, we're all going to stumble, but there's a lot of things we just don't have to go through in life that are preventable. And so I'm just curious for you guys, I know you talked about your marriage, and that's a really big one, and I think that's super relevant. But is there anything else you guys have stumbled with? Is there anything else you guys have just said, man, I love being connected, and this has been so helpful not to be alone as we've gone through this season or experienced this thing in our life?
I mean, one thing that's, very topical, there was a point where I wasn't sure where my job was going to end up in terms of, cuts due to COVID. Thank God it didn't happen, but there were others, on my team that I had to let go. So having a network of people that would reach out and just check in on me was huge. And regardless of what had happened in that situation, they would have been there, which is the thing that it was important to remember. And then another, relevant stumble. Kristi had back surgery late last year, and as the CEO of our house, that was I wasn't nearly as good at all the things that she does as she is, but and quite honestly, I don't know how I would have managed all the things that she does without our group's help. Right. So everything from a meal calendar to just a quick note of encouragement, or a small gift, or you name it. I mean, those were two things that without groups, I don't know how we would have managed to do that. Or we wouldn't have managed it very, very well, I think. And so I think those were stumbles that, some of that we could control, some of it we couldn't. But those were stumbles that could have gone very, very badly if we hadn't had the support of our group.
And I think even things like, that you don't think about, but repeating bad habits. I mean, I had a tendency to go to my sisters or a best friend when something was going wrong, or I needed help, or I was frustrated, and that could have continued had we not been in an environment to encourage us to hear God's voice and the truth in the situation, and not the lies we tell ourselves. And so it helped to push us back to each other and be honest about, instead of my tendency to go out and hang out with friends, to turn in and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking.
Or my tendency to shut down.
Or,
a tendency to shut down.
And it just, those were big stumbling blocks we've had for years that I think outside of having a good support system like that, we would have continued in that, bad habit and repeating those and just continued to stumble, which could have ultimately led us to not being together.
Right.
So, I think that community really helped us with that stumbling block for sure.
That's so good.
We had couples in our group that had their own stumbles, and we were able to help them. And so I think we had stumbles, but we also, when we weren't going through one of those stumbles, we're all chipping in and helping another person or another couple, right? Encouraging them to prevent that stumble from turning into a fall. So that was, again, you don't realize it's happening when it's in the middle of it, but looking back on it, there were definitely some ups and downs in terms of other people's lives and just different seasons of their marriage and their parenting, and the group was there to help them as well.
Well, and I think what we found is that kind of life is messy. Everybody is messy, and it just, we didn't have to come there with everything together, and so it just felt like a place where we, everybody was kind of helping each other with their own stumbling blocks. And just because you go to church and just because you believe in God and love Jesus does not mean you don't have any problems.
Goodness.
And so I think that we were under the false belief that we can't go to this group until we got it all together.
Right.
And that just wasn't it. So coming together and all of us knowing that stumbling blocks is just part of being human. But to be able to be in an environment like that that's supportive, you get permission to be messy with hope for it getting better.
Yeah.
And so, we just all kind of helped each other with those stumbling blocks, and we're allowed to be messy and make mistakes and have backslides, and then pull it together, and we just all rally forward.
100%. Yeah, and I feel like Jill and I have experienced that time and time again. I think about, like I shared the parenting comment. I mean, that came from a group where I was talking about my kids and da-da-da-da. And then, somebody said, that whole comment about, sometimes I just forget the age of my kids. And I forget that they are like 8 years old or 9 years old. And I'm like, okay, they're doing 9-year-old things. That's really helpful. And then I remember hearing the first time I heard about like the whole respond versus react. like for me, it was like, man, I reacted like my boys can't do that, or Jill, you can't say that, and boom, and so, and where's that actually coming from? Is that an insecurity? Is that a broken piece of me? All that kind. Well, I didn't even have time to think about that because I wanted to react so quick. Yeah. And that comment about, hey Buck, do you know there's a big difference between reacting and responding? Yeah. And I was like, this idea of going, hey, I'm just going to take 5 minutes. Like if my kids have done something wrong, they've done something wrong. 5 more minutes, unless it's like a life or death situation, yep. is going to be far more beneficial for me to go and calm the emotion down, think about what's happening, and go, okay, what's really going on, and how big, and are they acting like they're 11? And just so many of those things have been really helpful. And when people have hurt me, like, I'm pretty darn prideful. I do not want to forgive them.
Right.
I don't. And, hearing people's stories in groups and having those kind of sidebar conversations, hey, let's go get a beer. Let's go get a cup of coffee. Hey, here's some stuff like, with my oldest son. I mean, it's every time he goes into a new season, it's a new season. Jill and I have never parented. Right. Yep. He's about to turn 18, an 18-year-old. Yeah. So, hey, can we talk about this? Because yes. I'm probably prone to get some things wrong. Yep. Or, somebody hurts me, the idea to go, give me the energy to forgive them and remind me of what's true and remind me of the fact that every time I don't forgive them, I'm actually hurting me and not so much of them. Although, I think I'm hurting them.
Right.
That whole thing. So many of those encouraging things when I'm stumbling in life have just all come from being connected. Yeah. And by myself, I convince myself of really stupid things.
Well, and honestly. It's just the power of, I think, of getting rid of some of your junk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We all have it. It's just hard to admit it. So I think just speaking it to a trusted person or persons, it just feels like, I remember physically, like I could feel my chest later or my, wherever you carry your tension. It just felt like, even if there wasn't a solution, just having...
They just listened.
Someone listen to what your stumble is and what your challenge is, and saying, I don't know what to do here, or I messed up. And just being able to get that out was something we didn't... I think a lot of people, and maybe it's just a generational thing, but we think, we shouldn't talk about things like that. And you don't share these things, but we were meant to be connected and we were meant to share. We just were. And... again, that's one of our, gosh, I wish we would have known that sooner, because we didn't have to keep our marriage troubles or our parenting challenges to ourselves. And just even speaking it without getting a solution back allowed us to hear it and think about it and absorb it and pray about it. And when people say that you feel a weight lifted, I think you physically can. I think it's just the power of a safe environment to share that, even if it's, not okay, here's what you should go do.
Right. Absolutely. It's so good. So what would you guys say, just as we kind of wrap up, is there anything else that you would just add to the conversation, or anything else just based on your experience of, the fears or the traps of, oh my gosh, should we get in a group, and then getting in a group, and then leading a group and experiencing all those dynamics? Is there anything else you would just add to the convo?
Yeah.
I guess for us, and I think it's probably pretty universal, the benefits that come out of that you didn't even realize going into it. So like for us, the intentionality behind it was huge for our marriage initially, but the trickle effect on that, I think it gave us a way to model our faith to our children with, you can talk to your children all day long, and we have a habit of over talking things because we really want to make sure they understand. Right. Like, do you hear what we're saying?
All of our wisdom.
We've done this before, and they're like, there goes mom and dad again, But for us to model that for them, to model intentionality with our marriage, to model intentionality with our faith, to model intentionality in connecting with others. That may be one of the biggest at least for our family unit, was just, instead of speaking words and telling our children what we think they should do, they got to see it.
Yeah.
And I think it became where we kind of laughed and we were like, oh yay, because they'd say, it's your group night, or it's date night, things that they would not have said prior to that. So I think the trickle down effect, even extended family that'll tune in and watch because they know we go to church and this is an important part of our life, or even serving, like our group, outside of even group, we serve together in the community. Well, that's extended out into our family and friends outside of the North Point community that come and serve with us, that just have seen that they feel like they can connect with us. Like, oh, well, they're still Keith and Kristi. They seem kind of normal. They just don't see us at home. That's why they think we're normal.
Exactly.
But if they can do it, and and so I think that it's so much bigger than just yourself.
Gosh.
And and so I feel like I think modeling to our kids was one of the biggest things that we didn't plan on. That just was an effect of that. And then I think the impact we can have on other people through doing that. And like for me personally, I think God speaks through others to you a lot of times. And again, we're really thick-headed. I'm super stubborn. And I've gotten an opportunity to learn through being part of a group and serving as part of a group. That's really my passion. And so I've, developed all these relationships in the community where I can go and be the hands and feet to Jesus, and my children can do that. And our friends and family outside. I mean, it's just a way to spread goodness. And I think especially right now when we're all feeling disconnected, it's a way to connect. And it's a way to help other people, because I think a lot of us feel helpless and hopeless. Like, what are we going to do? When is this going to end? How can you can make a difference? And, whatever group looks like for you, if it's an in-person or it's a Zoom or it's a whatever that is for you, I think there are ways to connect and to serve and to really model goodness for your kids, which I think is a huge one for us parents.
Yeah.
And really just extended family and friends. I think action speaks louder than words.
That's so good. I love that. And it's a great reminder as you were talking. I've got a friend who's, if you met him, you would go like, this guy's a theologian. He knows the Bible backward and forwards. I mean, this guy could, from doctrine to theology to all the hardest questions. He's like, the answer fella. And his oldest son is agnostic and was going to a university on the East Coast. And when I talked to his oldest son, he said, the only reason I'm holding hope that there still is a God is because of my dad and because of what he's modeled. It's the real deal. I see it in him. I'm just trying to discover that for myself. So what his parents modeled spoke far more than what they could teach him, and they could teach him all kinds of theological things. And so I love you said that, Kristi, because I think that's so relevant. It's like our kids need to see that pattern to go. Sometimes they just don't even know what it looks like.
Right.
And seeing that in your lives, that's a really big deal.
And I think it's important to be transparent to a certain extent, too, and let them know we're still real people. They know. I mean, we're not perfect.
Sure.
They'll be the first to tell you that.
Yeah.
But to see, I think it's important to be real and to make mistakes, but to model effort and intentionality and love and, trying to do the best you can. And I think that's what community for us has done. It's really allowed us to be surrounded by people that are all trying to do life together. We're not perfect. None of us are. And none of us pretend to be. We don't have to in the setting. But we're all trying to be good partners, good parents, good followers of Christ. Like, we're trying to do that, and we're going to make mistakes. But I think that just gave us the support system that we didn't know we needed until we joined group.
Yeah.
So
that's fantastic.
I think that the fears, those are real. And so if anybody's listening to this, those fears are real, and they're not irrational. But I think you shouldn't underestimate your ability to help people, or to be helped. And I think that's what groups has also shown me is God put us here to help people and to be helped, and groups allows you to do that. And sometimes it's it's difficult to find other places in your life where you can get that kind of connection. So I would just encourage people to try, and just know that if it doesn't happen this time, it'll happen at some point in the future. But it is absolutely it was an awesome experience, and like Kristi said,
worth the risk.
Yeah, I'm sad that we quote unquote wasted a few years not doing it, but so happy we did.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks so much for just having this conversation and just being honest and vulnerable about, the things that kept you out of connection, what you've experienced in it, with your marriage, with your kids. I just think this is so incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
And so thank you guys again for being here, hanging out, having this convo.
Absolutely.
Well, for everybody tuning in, I just want to encourage you as you listen to Keith and Kristi and their story about connection. I want to encourage you guys to go to npaustin.com/groups. This is a time to take that step, to get connected, to experience something better. And so make sure, check that out. There's men's groups, women's groups, couples groups. There's a parenting group. There's a marriage group. There's just all kinds of groups. So take that step. It's worth a risk, and sign up today and get connected. Thanks again for being here, guys.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
All right.
Appreciate it.